Great. The first thing that we do, remember, this is a she'ur on the Haftarah. The Haftarah, that's the portion that we add from prophets. I guess prophets or kings or and anything that happens right after the Torah, Joshua, Shmuel, Samuel, Melachim, Kings, Shoftim, Judges, and Nevi'im. I think that's most of it. Maybe there's further on a couple of others. We'll find out as we go through the year. If there are from other places, that's where it seems to be from. And always there's a connection somewhere to the Parsha, sometimes more obvious, sometimes less obvious. What we generally do, we look for the connection. That's what we do in this class. And one of the things that we do, at least, we learn about the Haftarah, where it's from, what the background is, and try to see textual connections, thematic connections, and any other reason that the sages who chose the Haftarot would have chosen these particular ones. By the way, this is really, it's not relevant to us in our shul, but it was just something interesting that I learned from a conservative rabbi, and that is in the conservative movement, this isn't the new thing, this is the preface to the new thing, that in the conservative movement, a lot of shuls choose to do the triennial, meaning that it takes 3 years to complete the Torah, but that reading the Torah every Shabbat. But they don't do it the way they used to do it in the land of Israel. Vivian, are you able to hear? Yeah, okay. They don't do it the way they used to do it in the land of Israel, which was, let's say, Bereshit reading the first third, then the second Shabbat reading the second third, then the third Shabbat reading the last part, and then Noach, which means you'd get to a third of the Torah at Simchas Torah the first year, the second part of the Torah in the second year, and the third part of the Torah in the last year, which means it takes 3 years to complete. The way they do it in the conservative movement, they keep the same parsha as the rest of the world, meaning Orthodoxy, but the first year of the cycle, they read the first third of the parasha. Then the second year, they read the middle part, the second third, and the final year of the triennial cycle, they read the third third, the last third. So they also complete it in 3 years, but not in a contiguous fashion, which is good on one hand because it means they're aligned with the parsha that the rest of the world is laning. But what's not so good is that it keeps skipping the story. Like you hear the beginning of Bereshit, you don't even hear about what happened, in the middle and the last part of it. And then the second year, it's the middle, and the third year. Is that clear what the triennial is? All good? Okay. So what happens is the Haftarah connection doesn't necessarily align with whatever third they're reading. So they have offered now, and in the conservative movement, not in Orthodoxy, they have offered an alternative Haftarah if people want to read that connects with whatever third of the Parsha they happen to be reading, which I thought was just really, really interesting. And it's following the idea that we should see thematic connections with the Parsha. Okay, that was in parentheses. I thought that was an interesting tidbit of information to offer this group. Let's first talk about the Parsha. Once we know what the Parasha is about, then we might be able to find thematic connections with the Haftarah. Oh, the name of the Parsha is? Va'era? No, that was last week. Close, though. Va'era, you meant, not Va'era. So that was last week. What's this week, Milton?
Bo.
Bo means come. And it is God saying to Moshe, it's interesting, God doesn't say go to Paro. God says come, which some people understand as drawing, I'm coming with you. Come with me. I will come with you. I will be on your shoulder. I'll be whispering in your ear when you go to see Paro. And the numerical equivalent, the gematria of the word bo, bet is 2, aleph is 1. So the gematria equivalent is 3. Now that's a nice little hint as how many plagues are listed in this week's parasha. Guess what the answer is?
Right, 3.
3. The last 3 makot are listed in this week's parasha, and we see the numerical equivalent from the word bo, gematria. Something to share at your Shabbat table if you are sharing with someone. What are the last 3? Anybody remember? Trying to get you guys to speak a little bit.
When Choshech and Makat Bechor is the last 2,
The last two are darkness and the killing of the
Darkness
firstborn
and
males.
And the firstborn.
So I always remember it, Vivian, through what we say on Seder night, Ditzach Adash Be'achav. So I know it's an Aleph that starts the eighth plague, and that was Arbe, which is locusts.
Oh, locust.
Arbe. So the first plague that we will hear about in the, I don't know what it is that you sent, Lance. Do you want to tell us? I can't look at links when we're teaching, when we're learning. Do you want to tell us just what that is that you sent us? Vivian, why don't you mute yourself when you're not speaking because it gives feedback. Yes, Lance. You haven't been able to unmute. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yes. What I sent you is
just me, not to everybody?
It's in the chat.
Oh,
click on the blue.
It's to everybody. No,
there.
No, you said you sent to me. I didn't know if you sent to everybody.
No, I'm sorry. I sent to everybody. It's a link to the Hebcal page, which has the Orthodox and the Triennial, and it's listed completely, and it has the Haftarahs, and it has...
Oh, it has the optional Haftarahs that I mentioned?
Well, it has one optional.
No. Oh, it does have it. I'm sorry, what do you mean?
It has Jeremiah. Look at it.
No, I don't have time to, I can't look at it now. I'm sorry, we're learning. I just want to know if it offers those optional ones that I mentioned.
It offers one optional one.
One optional, not two. That's interesting because it's a triennial cycle. So you could imagine they would offer two.
No, you misunderstand. They only do the first third of the Parsha each week.
I know that. That's what I'm sorry, that's what I explained. Oh, you're saying for this year, they offer one option.
Yes.
And then next year, they'll offer a different option. I thought this was general for the whole China. Okay, good. So anybody, got it.
I go to Park Avenue Synagogue.
No, Lance, let's stop. I think that's enough. It's not important. It was just an interesting, curious thing. We don't need to hear too much about it. It's important
to the conservative movement.
No, I get that. I'm not teaching the conservative movement. So we're talking about the Haftarah for today, but thank you for sharing that.
My job is done for that.
No, that's great. So anybody who wants to see what they offer in the conservative movement, they can go on the link. Thank you. I appreciate that link. Thank you very much, Lance. Okay. That would be for this year, for the first third. Next year, they'll offer a second one for the second third and the third one for the third. The Parsha is the first one is Arbe, locusts. So there was anybody who's been in, yes, Stuart. Did you say something? Right. We said, right, exactly. Locust.
Locust, darkness, and the killing of the firstborn.
And the killing of the firstborn, exactly. Locust, darkness, and the killing of the firstborn, exactly. How many days did darkness last? Anybody remember? 3 days. 3 days, according to the Midrash, the Egyptians who were under the cover of darkness, it was such a thick darkness that it was actually like a physical darkness. Those who were lying in bed were not able to get up. Those who were sitting could not stand. Those who were standing could not sit. And they felt so alone. They felt so alone. Can imagine, I can't even imagine what that would feel like. But I know that being sensory deprived and being in darkness for 3 days sounds awful. And it's interesting, Paro, Moshe keeps telling Paro, let my people go. And Paro keeps offering some compromise positions. And for example, he said, in the previous parsha, he said, the men may go, but not the women. And Moshe just walked out. That wasn't an option. Then he said, you can go, but don't take your animals, which wasn't an option because they wanted to offer korbanot, offerings to God. That is the way they would worship at the time. And so Paro says, as God hardens Paro's heart again, Moshe, get out of here. The next time I see your face, you will die. And Moshe's response is, I will never see your face again. It's a great exchange right there. Then comes the plague of the firstborn and the, one second, that it'll happen exactly at midnight, b'chatzot halayla. And if the Jews, the Hebrews, the Israelites, whatever you want to call them, follow God's instructions, remember that was putting the blood on the doorposts and getting the offering of the Korban Pesach, the Paschal Lamb, ready. If they follow it, it is a sign. Obviously, God doesn't really need a sign. God obviously knows who the Jews are and who aren't. but not that they had a mezuzah because they didn't have that yet. But this is the way for for people to show God. It's like telling God out loud or telling God in a public way. I believe in you as my God, and so I am publicly acknowledging, and then God knows that this is the group of Jews who should be saved. And then it continues telling us about Chag Pesach, and there is a command by Moshe, not once, but more than once even. I'm actually going to read it. One second. I want to read it to you because it does relate to Haftarah in some way. The beginning of Parashat Bo. This is chapter 10, verse 2. Or first verse 1. The Lord said to Moshe, go to Paro, actually come to Paro. It's not a good translation in my mind. For I have hardened his heart and his servant's heart, so I may place these signs of mine among them. Remember, God's purpose is not just taking the Jews out of Egypt. It is also showing Paro, showing the Egyptians, and showing the Jews that God is all powerful and the whole world belongs to God. And in order, leman tisaper, in order that you will tell the story to your children and your grandchildren about how I mocked Egypt, or maybe abused, or maybe gave them a hard time, and about my signs that I placed among them, and you shall know that I am the Lord. So it's also about telling this story throughout the generations. Keep that in mind as we go into the Haftarah. And then they leave Egypt. They actually leave. What do they leave with? Matzah. Because their dough did not have time to rise, they had to eat the Korban Pesach in a hurried manner. The Paschal, they had to eat it in a hurried manner, as the Bechor Shor says, as people who are rushing to get to the next stop, which they were. So whether they felt the imminence or they were worried, it was a window of time that Paro let them go after the plague of the firstborn, not clear. But whatever it was, they had to literally do it with their staffs in their hands and their clothing on and just ready to go, kind of stuffing the food into their mouth. And there's the whole issue of matzah, unleavened, which is both a poor person's bread because it's so filling and it doesn't require yeast, I guess, and time. But also, it also symbolizes going out to freedom because that's what they ate as they left Egypt. There are the laws of the Paschal Lamb, which create a covenant between God and the Jewish nation. And this parsha also has a Chodesh Elechem, the Rosh Chodeshim. I don't know why it's not in the summary that I have here, but it's about the first mitzvah given to the Jewish people as a nation, which is sanctification of the new moon, the Rosh Chodesh, which we just had this week, Sunday night, Monday. Everybody good? Anybody want to add something about the parsha, or are we on par? We're good with it? Yes, Stuart, did you want to add something?
I just wanted to say that when Pharaoh's Goshen, were they punishing Goshen? I would say so. The Levites were the only ones that practiced it, whatever really they had.
What was it that the Levite? Wait, what was it that the Levim only practiced? I didn't catch that.
Levim was the only part of practice before they went to Egypt. They were the only ones that practiced Egypt.
In Egypt, so the Levim, yeah, got it. So I think maybe also the Kohanim, the whole tribe of Levi. Is that possible? The whole tribe of Levi, but they were called Levim at the time. That's true. I don't know if they were differentiated to Kohanim and Levim. Good call.
I want to say something. There was something else I want to say. When Yaakov addressed his sons, he didn't think that Levi and Simon were going to be good. He didn't know that. He said he thought Judah was the best, but Simon and Levi, because they killed people in Shechem, he didn't think they were so good people. It turned out they were good.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. That's terrific. Appreciate it. I think just because Judah was good doesn't mean Levi isn't good. Let's just remember that. It's so easy to pit one against the other. A lot of them were good. I even think Reuven was good, and that he was given like Stuart. Stuart, I just want to stop you because I want to get back to the Haftarah portion, okay?
Okay,
That'll be a
okay.
parsha, that would be about Vayechi, but we're not there anymore. Okay, but thank you for pointing that out about Levim. By the way, that's not in the Torah, that's not in the text. You're talking about a midrash, a midrashic explanation of it, a deeper one. It's, as my granddaughter said, a midrash explains the Torah, but it's not written in the Torah, which is a great way to understand what midrash is, as opposed to pshat. Pshat would be the simple textual meaning about what's written in the text, literally. And midrash is a different way of understanding it, filling in the gaps and spaces. And we learn about the Levium from other places, not for now, but something that might come up again. Thank you. I want to go to our Haftarah. And as I remind you, I have these books, all these books in front of me, and collated a whole bunch of information and thoughts about it. And of course, I always want to hear your thoughts about it. And thank you everybody for joining. I do try to start on time at 11 o'clock. So would be great if you could come earlier. I know life happens, but what we did until now was we recapped more or less. We recapped the parsha. That's what we did till now. Somebody wants to speak and I don't see you, please make sure to raise your hand or just unmute and say, excuse me, or I'd like to say something. Here we go. First of all, we're in Jeremiah. Does anybody remember the name of the prophet who was the Haftarah last week?
Ezekiel.
Thank you, Ezekiel, Yechezkel. I want to tell you something. When I started reading the Haftarah, it felt like I was reading a continuation of last week's Haftarah. I didn't even remember at the beginning. I didn't notice that one was Yechezkel and one was Yirmiyahu. And you'll see it's so interesting for those who were here last week, and maybe we can bring in the pieces from last week. It was so interesting that that Chazal, our sages, the ones who decided what would be the Haftarah, and those are the ones that we use. There's a little discrepancy sometimes between the Ashkenazic and Sephardic, and I always mention when there is. This week, there's no differentiation. I don't want to go into the Sephardic from last week. But to me, it felt like I was just continuing. And only when I read in one of the books, like, wait a minute, you do notice that last week was Yechezkel and this week is Yirmiyahu. Now, they did live around the same time. That's true. But it's interesting that our sages decided to pick a Haftarah that continues the theme of last week. So does anybody remember the theme of last week's Haftarah, whether you were in the class or you were in shul? Anybody remember what Yechezkel? Yeah, it's very easy to forget. I get that. Anybody? And it's okay if you don't. It's not a pop quiz. Yes.
That Egypt will be destroyed
yes.
by
Excellent.
by Nebuchadnezzar.
Yeah, Nebuchadnezzar. B'diuk. Thank you, Stuart. Excellent. So it was about Egypt being destroyed. Well, not destroyed, being conquered in around the time of the first temple because they did not fulfill their promise to the Jews, and they didn't help the Jews to fight against Nebuchadnezzar or the other armies because the Jews wanted an alliance. They didn't fulfill it, and therefore they will be conquered by Nebuchadnezzar. Thank you. That was excellent, Stuart. Really, really appreciate that. Now, here's the thing. If we're going to continue that theme of Egypt getting its comeuppance, so to speak, let's think of a few reasons why last week's parasha and this week's parasha would continue that theme. This is not a trick question. It's just thinking about remember, Ba'era had the first 7 plagues, and about Moshe and Aaron coming to Paro. This week is the last 3 plagues and the exodus from Egypt. Yeah, okay, that would be the basic. Yes, Moshe, b'vakasha. No, wait, Stuart, hold on 1 second. Moshe, you're still muted, so I don't know if you were talking, but 1 second, Stuart. Moshe raised his hand, so just a minute.
I'm sorry. I'm looking at the Hertz Chumash, and they have Yechezkel as the Haftarah for Bo as well.
What do you mean? The same chapter?
It's Havchet, starting from 25.
28. 1 second. What was last week? Give me a moment. Last week for Ba'era was. Yeah. I know. So we're just trying to figure out. It was Yechezkel 28:25 to 29:21. That was Va'era. You're saying it has the same exact one for Bo?
Unless I'm looking at the wrong week. I'm
I think
sorry.
you must be looking at Va'era, because that was Va'era.
You're right. I'm sorry.
No worries, all good. Okay, so what could be the thematic connection? Yeah, go on. Oh, no, okay. The thematic connection between last week and this week that they would want to continue in the same vein. Anybody, thoughts?
So,
Yes, Stuart, you want to suggest?
yeah, I say that Ezekiel was a student of Jeremiah.
Was a what of Jeremiah?
Their fathers were both priests. Their parents were both priests.
I'm sorry, I don't understand what you're saying. I apologize.
They both came from their parents were both priests.
Yeah, I understand that. Okay, so they're both Kohanim. I don't know that. I mean, I'm trusting you. I don't know that myself, but that doesn't explain why you would take the same chapter. I mean, you could have taken another chapter from Yechezkel or from Yeshayahu. That's not a reason that they should be 1 week after another. It's about the connection to the Parsha. So I suggest
They both wanted to see Egypt be destroyed. That's all.
they wanted Egypt to be destroyed. Okay, so the thematic connection thank you. So one way of looking at it is that, remember, the first 7 plagues, and that was the beginning of conquering Egypt and of showing Egypt that God is all powerful and our God, the God that we believe in, is the God. The first 7 plagues happened last week. The last 3 plagues happened this week and the Exodus. So it really is a continuation. If you think about it, Va'era and Bo are as if one long parsha, because the process was, yes, Stuart.
Not finished. Wasn't finished.
Nothing. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
Wasn't finished yet. Maybe
I
that's
heard
why
you.
it
Yeah,
wasn't
go on. So go on.
What? So it's a continuation of the plague.
Correct. Yes, exactly. Something else? Yeah.
I don't.
Go
I
on.
don't know what. That.
Continuation of the plagues. Yeah. Anything else you want to add to that?
I don't know.
No, no, that's terrific. That's what I was saying. Actually, it concurs exactly. It's the continuation of the plagues, the continuation of the punishment of Egypt. And so it makes sense to have 2 haftarot that are a continuation that play on the same theme. Thank you. Okay. Hadavar asher diber Hashem. So first of all, let's notice that prophets often, not always, but most often, says, this is what God told me, showing the people who they're speaking to. This isn't my words. This is actually coming from God. 1 second, somebody, there's feedback. Let me just see. Vivian, did you want to say something? No, Vivian? No, okay. It's just the muting in the meantime. Of course, you should unmute if you have something to say. Please, everybody, feel free to unmute if you would like to say something. Lavo Nebuchadnezzar. Okay, let's read that. This is about the word which the Lord spoke to Jeremiah, Yirmiyahu, about the coming of Nebuchadnezzar. By the way, there are 2 ways to spell Nebuchadnezzar. We always say Nebuchadnezzar, but the Hebrew of the Akkadian, it's the same person, Nebuchadnezzar. So here they translate it, or they write it in English, Nebuchadnezzar. A lot of places you'll see Nebuchadnezzar. From what I read, these are alternate spellings of the same word. Like my daughter, Maria, you could have written it Moriya, that's the way we do it, or Moriah, or Moriah, or Moriah, or Moriah. They're alternate spellings, but it's about that same person who we call Nebuchadnezzar, to attack the lands of Egypt. This is about attacking the lands of Egypt. Again, similar to what we spoke about last week. Declare in Egypt, proclaim in Migdol, in Nof, and Tachpanches, hard word, Tachpanches. Take your post and stand ready, for the sword has devoured all around you. This is warning Egypt of what's going to happen. Now, I don't know that Yirmiyahu actually prophesied this to the Egyptians, although it is aimed towards them. I don't know if they respected him as a Navi, as a prophet. One of the things I can tell you, second, is The same Nebuchadnezzar, who later conquered the land of Israel and destroyed the first temple, this is the battle that Yirmiyahu was warning about. This battle took place around the year 605 BCE, approximately 1,000 years after Egypt was devastated by the 10 plagues and the other punishments. Nebuchadnezzar attacked Egypt again about 20 years after this battle, and during that strike managed to not only defeat the Egyptians, but actually conquer them. And it likely occurred, that second battle, a short time after the destruction of the first temple, since Jeremiah lived through this whole period and prophesied Egypt's imminent downfall. Why are your stalwarts swept away? They did not stand firm, for the Lord thrust them down. They had no choice. God made many stumble. They fell over one another. They said, up, let's return to our people, to the land of birth, because of the deadly sword, meaning that they were scared. They wanted to run away. There they called Pharaoh, king of Egypt, braggart, who let the hour go by. Evir hamoed. Braggart. So this is something, if you remember, we spoke about last week with Yechezkel, that the reason for Pharaoh's downfall, now this is Pharaoh at the time of Egypt, at our Parsha and during the Haftarah. Whoever was Pharaoh, Paro at that time, had a lot of pride and arrogance. And remember, we spoke last week that because the Nile River overflows and offers water, so they don't need to wait for rain necessarily in Egypt, because there's the Nile River, which overflows and irrigates the land of Egypt, the crops. Therefore, Paro always felt very all-powerful because of that. Oh, I missed something, one connection that I marked down for myself. It's 13. So the same word bo, remember we used the word bo, come to Pharaoh. The thing, the words, the topic that God said to Jeremiah, the prophet, lavo, which is a little out of, it doesn't fit exactly right in the Hebrew, not exactly right. Lavo Nebuchadnezzar, it could have been libiat, the coming of Nebuchadnezzar, but this bo echoes the bo of our Parsha, which is pretty cool. Pretty cool. It's a small connection, but it's cool. Okay. Continuing on, just a moment. Okay. If you remember last week, Yechezkel was warning the Egyptians of what will happen. And in this one, it's just going to happen. That's what Yirmiyahu was saying. Like, you've lost your chance. Remember that thing about the Moed? You missed your time. Evir HaMoed, the hour went by. You were warned by Yechezkel, but you didn't do anything about it. You didn't go back and fulfill your word. You did not believe in the word from God. So the time is going to come. As I live, declares the king meaning God, whose name is Lord of hosts. So Hashem Tzvakot or Tzvaot is God's name. Tzava is inside there. Tzava means army. So this is God who can also command armies. Ki ketavor beharim u'kecharmel bayam yavo. What is Tavor and Carmel? Does anybody know? Har Tavor? Anybody with me on this? I'm going to put into the chat and go out of screen sharing for a moment.
The mountains, isn't it in Haifa?
Which one?
Well, Carmel definitely is in Haifa.
That's right. The Carmel mountain range. It's beautiful. As you come up to Haifa, you see the Carmel mountain range, really strong and stalwart and immovable. So God is saying, as surely as these mountains are strong and tall and stand firm, that is as sure as I'm going to bring this punishment onto Egypt. Yirmiyahu was using landmarks in the country of Israel. One of them is the Carmel, the mountain range. The other one is Har Tavor. Anybody know what Har Tavor is known for? You should, if you ever go to Israel, you should pass by it. It's beautiful. Anybody know Har Tavor? Who made that famous? Anybody? No? It was Devorah HaNeviah, Deborah the prophetess. Har Tabor, that's where she used to sit on top so people could see from near and far that she wasn't trying to hide anything or be secluded with a man. That is a Har Tabor, and it still stands to this day. There's a monastery on top in some sort of winding road. I've never gone up it. But so those are well-known landmarks in the country, in Medinat Israel. Okay. Continuing on. Equip yourself for exile, fair Egypt. Maybe that's mocking Egypt. You who dwell secure, you think you dwell secure. For Noph shall become a waste, desolate without inhabitants. Continuing on, Egypt is a handsome heifer, a gadfly. I don't even know what a gadfly is. Butcher? Oh, it might be butcher. Keretz, likrotz means to wink. I don't know what that means. Ba. So remember we said bo, like the word bo is coming. It's repeated here. Baba, it is coming. Baba, it's repeating it. The mercenaries too in her midst are like stall-fed calves. They too shall turn tail, flee as one and make no stand. Their day of disaster is upon them, the hour of their doom. She shall wrestle away like a snake, I guess silently slithering away as they come marching in force. They shall come against her with axes like hewers of wood. They shall cut down her forest, declares the Lord. Ki lo yechaker ki rabu me arbe. They are more numerous than locusts. So that's another connection. Remember, the first plague in this parasha is locusts, arbe, and cannot be counted. Okay, I want to take a pause here and ask this group, why does Israel need to know so much about Egypt? Why is that important? Why is it important for Yirmiyahu to tell the Jews, and I guess Egypt knew about it. I don't know if they did, because they did live near each other in proximity. Why was it so important to tell Israel about the upcoming doom of Egypt? Any thoughts? What question? Yes, Robert, please.
Israel repeatedly planned on asking the Egyptians or relied upon them for help, and they met their doom.
Right.
In doing so.
Go on.
So
right. Who met their doom?
Israel.
Israel met their doom. Okay, good. Continue. Can you take that one step further?
Relying upon unfaithful allies. So
unfaithful allies, right. Good. And go on. Yeah, you have something else?
Being reminded, don't rely upon people who you think are your friends or your allies. You can't rely upon them.
Right. So it's interesting. There seems to be, thank you, a bit of a conundrum, like a circular thought process that I've read in different places, that on one hand, Yirmiyahu and Yechezkel predicted the doom that Nebuchadnezzar was going to raise Jerusalem, raise R-A-Z-E, not R-A-I-S-E, and burn it and burn the temple and conquer the temple, and that Egypt is going to be conquered. So that's one hand. And in that sense, the Jews should have believed them and not tried to make an alliance and fight back. And, that's hard, because maybe that means that they did tshuva of some kind. I don't know, maybe their actions didn't show tshuva, but it's hard to say the Jews should not try to fight back and just sit back and allow it to happen. Because we also heard another thing, that Egypt is going to be punished because they didn't help the Jews. So that feels like circular thinking, and I'm not 100% sure which one makes sense, or if it's both of them. Like on one hand, Egypt should know because you're haughty and because we predicted it, you're going to actually be conquered. On the other hand, the reason you're going to be conquered is because you didn't help the Jews. So should the Jews have reached out to Egypt? Should they not have reached out to Egypt? Maybe for both those reasons, not clear. But it is partly what Robert said, that they didn't learn their lesson. Maybe it happened previously as well, in addition to Egypt. And yet we're also supposed to be caring to Egypt. So not quite sure. Anybody have thoughts about that? Lance, you have something? I see you're typing something, so I'm wondering if you have thoughts about it. Vivian, you have something?
Yeah, but I have a thought about it.
Please.
I think it says also that they will know who is God, and they would acknowledge that their God is useless, has no power at all, and will recognize the Jews' God. So maybe some of this is being done to them, and they're being punished and being conquered by other nations because they still didn't recognize the correct God.
Yeah. So thank you. So whether that's by saying it out loud or by believing in the prophecy or whatever it is, yeah. So maybe that's the core of it. The core of it. Yeah. Nice. Thank you. That's helpful.
You see me? He expected
Yep.
more from the Jews. He expected more from the Jews, Hashem, and they behaved almost like the Egyptians in 605. In that they didn't follow all the rules in all those years.
Thank you, Stuart. And great. And you're touching on another reason, and that is if the Jews recognize that they acted, as Stuart pointed out, like the Egyptians in many ways, maybe when we haven't gotten to the end of the Haftarah, we will get there soon. Maybe the Jews are worried about, well, I mean, they're going to hear what happened to the Egyptians. Maybe that'll happen to them. Right. What will that happen to them? Will they be conquered? Will they be decimated? You know, Egypt, even though God promises that they'll come back after 40 years, I think it is, we said last week, they never came back to be the power, the superpower that they were before. So that's the big question that's floating in the background. And we'll talk more about from the Parsha as well as in the Haftarah. Let's go back and finish so that we make sure we finish the Haftarah and we'll have more of a discussion. Thank you so much for those thoughts. I know it's not simple. Sometimes the connection needs to be teased out, and that's what we do here. I love that. Continuing, fair Egypt shall be shamed, handed over to the people of the north. The Lord of hosts, remember we said host is also army. The God of Israel has said, I will inflict punishment on Ammon, the tutelary, I have no idea how to pronounce this, deity of the city, Thebes, her gods and her kings. There's feedback. Who is that from? I can't tell, maybe you, Stuart. So if you need to be unmuted, if you could just make sure we don't have banging of any kind. On Pharaoh and all who rely on Pharaoh, that was the Jews. I will deliver them into the hands of those who seek to kill them, into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, into the hands of his subjects. But afterwards, you shall be inhabited again as in former days, although not really in former days. But you, just 1 minute, it is until 28. Now look at the last two psukim. Now it seems disconnected. We've talked about Egypt the whole time. Now, but you, Israel, have no fear, my servant Jacob. Al tira avdi Yaakov. Anybody know that phrase? Al tira avdi Yaakov? Vivian saying yes. Anybody else? Anybody know where we see it in our ritual liturgy somewhere? Anybody familiar with it?
Al tira, do not fear.
No, yes, 100%. But those 4 words, Al tira avdi Yaakov. Do not fear my.
Do not be afraid. Do not be afraid.
Right. And where do we see this phrase? Where do we see it? Not what the English is, but where do we use that? Maybe you don't know it. I know it because I know a song. It actually comes up Motzei Shabbat. If you look in your Birkonim, your benchers, or wherever you have, after the Havdalah, I think it's after the Havdalah, and after the song I always sing on Zoom, Havdalah, there's a song, Al Tira Avdi Yaakov. Now that's a whole other discussion why it's sung Motzei Shabbat. But I know a song to it. Al Tira Avdi Yaakov, Al Tira, Amar Hashem li Yaakov. God said to Jacob, Al Tira, don't be afraid. Al Tira Avdi Yaakov, Al Tira. It is, we use it, it comes from here. This is where it comes from. I never knew that was the source for it. But we could look into that another time. But you have no fear, my servant Jacob, and we're going to talk about it. So keep this in mind. Be not dismayed, O Israel. Remember, we talked about, yes, Moshe. Unmute, please.
I know there's a Israeli dance for that song.
Oh, that I didn't know. Well, that'll have to be in person that you'll show us, Moshe, because
I don't think I can remember it exactly, but
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised. Sometimes our legs have muscle memory, but I didn't know that. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Be not dismayed, O Israel. Remember we said Yaakov and Yisrael, Jacob and Israel, the two names, they're often used as parallel. There's a word for it, I can't remember. That two parts of the same statement in poetry is used. I will deliver you from far away, your folk from the land of captivity, and Jacob again will have calm and quiet with none to trouble him, even though that's not what he said to Pharaoh. He said, my days were long, or no, were short and full of trouble. Again, Al tirav de Yaakov, twice. My servant Jacob, have no fear, declares the Lord, I am with you. I will make an end of all the nations among which I have banished you, but I will not make an end of you. I will not leave you unpunished, but I will chastise you in measure. Bimidah, in measure. It won't be endless. You can know that in the end, I will be with you. Okay, that's the whole Haftarah. Most of it a continuation about Egypt. The last two psukim is a reassurance to Israel. And that's, so a few things I wanted to say about that, but I got my notes all here, but I would love to hear if people have something, their thought.
Yeah, I would say something.
Yeah.
Always at the end of every Haftarah, no matter what Hashem does to the people, they'll all be redeemed in every will work out all right.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yep. And we said that last week. Perfect. That's perfect. So that's one reason that we don't end the Haftarah two psukim before. But here's the question. Why did Yirmiyahu say it there? He didn't know he was going to be a Haftarah. This was just his prophecy. Why did Yirmiyahu add those two psukim after the whole thing about Egypt, comforting, reassuring Israel?
You feel that, Jacob?
I'm sorry, what?
Need to be dismayed. They need to be dismayed, Israel. Don't be afraid. Don't worry about it. Hashem will take care of you. That's
nice. Right. So first of all, right. So that, thank you. This goes back to the question we said before. Israel's like, wait a minute. Is that what's going to happen to me too? I also disobeyed God. Am I also going to be dispersed and never again be who I am? So right away, it's okay. Al tirav de Yaakov, you will get punished, but in measure, it'll happen. Now, take a step back. Where do we see these words about not fearing previously in the Torah? Not in our parsha, previously.
Is it when Moshe is telling Joshua?
Oh, no, but maybe, but let's go back. Yes, maybe. Hold that thought. I just want to throw you back. You could look it up in the meantime, by the way. But I'm just going to give you a hint. It's in Sefer Bereshit. It's in the first book, the book of Genesis.
Oh, covenant of the parts.
Nice. Berit ben Abtarim. What does Abraham say? God, how will I know? How will I know? Because remember, what does God say? Your children, your descendants are going to go to a land, Shalolahem, that they don't belong in, a strange nation, and they will have to be there for a while. And so Abraham is asking, well, how will I know, like, that things will be okay? And there's somebody else. So God says, do not fear. Do not fear. 1 second. Let me just find the quote. You know, when you have 4 books you look at, you got to find the quote each time. This is in Sod Haftarah. 1 minute. I can find it. There's somebody else also that talks about who was fearful when he went down to Egypt, or when he was going to go down to Egypt.
Jacob,
thank you, Yaakov. So hold on 1 second. Let me just find the quote from Berit ben Abtarim, if I can. No, where's the one? Here it is. Nope, not there. Where is the quote from Berit ben Abtarim? I don't have it in front of me right now. If you want to look that up, Helen, you are welcome to. But when Yaakov goes down to Egypt, now, so here's the hints for what he's really asking, okay? When Yaakov goes down to Egypt, he's going down because there's famine, right? Remember, there's famine in Israel. Yaakov is going down because Yosef made sure that there is an abundance of grain. So why is God reassuring Yaakov that he'll be okay? He's going down because he needs to go to Egypt to be okay. So it couldn't be that Yaakov is worried about his physical safety and his family's, because he's going to get physical safety. And it says, what does God say? God says, do not be afraid. This is also from the Torah, from here and from the Torah. Yaakov. Remember I said it's from here, but it's also in Torah. Wait, no, that's not true. That's at the end of the Haftarah. I'm sorry. I'm still looking for the quote. It must be in a different book. Just a moment. I quoted the wrong place. Here we go. Okay. Vayomer, and God said, Anochi ha'el, I am the God, Elohei avicha, the God of your fathers. Al tira, do not be afraid, merida mitzrayma, from going down to Egypt. Ki legoy gadol asimcha sham, I will make you a great nation there. Anochi ered imcha mitzrayma, I'll come down with you to Egypt. Anochi alcha gam alo, I will bring you up. What Yaakov may have been worried about is that his family will go down to Egypt and will be a great nation there, but not a Jewish nation. Maybe the Jews will assimilate. Maybe we won't be worthy of the covenantal promise. Maybe the whole Jewish thing and unique relationship to God will disappear. And that's what Abraham, according to this interpretation, is asking as well. It's not just physical safety of their descendants. It is spiritual safety. So God says, and this is so beautiful, I'm going to go out with you. Any exile you go to, anywhere you leave, I will be with you. So I will make sure that you come back again. And we will keep this loving relationship, this unique relationship, the covenantal relationship. We will keep it. And that's what you shouldn't be worried about. That's what you shouldn't be worried about. I like that, Robert, when you nod your head, that makes me feel good. It resonated, right? It resonated for me so powerfully. I thought that was really beautiful. So here's the question. Here's a continued question now. In that case, maybe this Haftarah should have been for Vayigash, for that Parsha. I'm not sure you're having the same problem Milton has with your camera. I'm so sorry. Maybe Vayigash, when Yaakov had, when this passage is, maybe that's where it should have been, because then it's don't be afraid. And in the Haftarah, don't be afraid. Why put it right here in Parashat Bo? Any thoughts?
Maybe because when they're actually going to leave Egypt.
Not going to, Moshe.
But they are.
They are. Yeah, somebody just taught me that this is a yeshiva shvei. Say better, like be more honed. Exactly. Not that they're going to leave. We know they're going to leave. They're leaving. This is the closure. This is the closure. This is the end. It started with the promise to Abraham in the covenant of the pieces, Berit Ben Abtarim, continuing with Yaakov. And now Moshe is actually leading them out. And here is where the Haftarah is saying, don't be afraid. This is the end. This is the book ending. And there's another textual connection for back to Abraham, because Abraham, God promises that, what does it say? It's got to be in here. It's in another one. That I am, just a minute. I marked it down. Lapid Esh, just looking to see which one it's in. Lapid Esh. Yeah, so this is in Haftarah Unrolled. Yep. That God promised, here it is. When God speaks to Abraham, Abraham, do not be afraid. So this is the opposite. I mean, he does say it, Abdi Yaakov, Jacob, which is his descendant, but he's the descendant who went down. Here it is. In the Tila, I have to mute you. Okay, sorry. V'hinei tanur hashan, there was a pillar of smoke, v'lapid esh, and a pillar, a flame of fire. And how did God take them out of Egypt? With amud esh, with a pillar of fire. So this now makes a thread of connection from Abraham to Yaakov to Moshe, taking them out. And there's one more connection that one of the books brought that I thought was really beautiful. He brought a quote from Samuel. Here's the quote. וגם נצח ישראל לא ישקר. The eternity of Israel will not lie. ולא ינחם will not be regretted. כי לא אדם הוא להנחם. It will not be regretted to man. Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. So who are the four people who I just mentioned? Abraham, Yaakov, Moshe, Shmuel. Okay? I'm going to tell you something that I just learned about these four people. These were the only four people that Hashem called in the Torah or in the Tanakh twice. Abraham, Abraham, Yaakov, Yaakov, Moshe, Moshe, Shmuel, Shmuel. Because of God's love to them and also to hurry them up. We need you. We need you to move things along. We need you to do the next piece in this thread, in this biographical connection. Leaving us all with this promise of uplifting, that God will always be with us, reassuring us that while we will be punished immediately because we deserved it at the time, we are promised that God will come with us and will bring us back to Israel. Anything else anybody would like to? Any thoughts, ideas, feelings, the connection? To me, it feels like I see the Parsha and the Haftarah right next to each other. They feel so connected now to me. So here's one last thought. In the same way that Moshe tells us over and over and over and over and over again to remember the Exodus, we even say it in our davening every single day. It's part of our Kiddush. We say it so many times. Why do we need to remember the Exodus? Why is that so important? One of the reasons that somebody gave us a connection to the Haftarah is that even when this is happening to us, even when Yirmiyahu is telling us this is going to happen, if we keep in mind God's promise from the last two psukim, we will feel much more reassured when we go into exile, because we'll remember that even when we were in Egypt, which was so awful, God redeemed us. Yeah, Vivian.
I don't know, I have a thought that there is mention that the Jewish people need to know what slavery was in order to know that it's so terrible and so devastating, and it should never happen to any human being, Jewish or not. And because it says, Ki avadim hayitem be'eretz Mitzrayim, you should know what it was like, and no way should you accept that anyone should be enslaved.
That's really beautiful. And Vivian, you touched on something we mentioned last week, that we're told, I think it was last week, that we were told that there's a midrashic explanation that when that the halachot, the laws of not keeping a Jewish slave more on the seventh year to let them go, was told to them right there in Egypt, because that's when they were feeling what it was like to be slaves. So that's the perfect time to tell them, and listen, when you're free men, free women, and you can hire slave, or you can take the Hebrew, it was about the Jewish slaves, one second, Robert, then you must remember, because you're feeling it now. So that connects really, really, really beautifully. And by the way, we mentioned also that at the time of Yirmiyahu, they did not let them go. And there's a horrible story that they were just keeping them over and over. Yirmiyahu finally said, you gotta let them go. They did. And on that same day, they took them back because they couldn't imagine their lives without slaves. So thank you. That's another really good reason. Robert.
I think it was in, well, this partial or the previous, that even the Jews had their own slaves.
Yeah, that's what, in Egypt?
Yeah.
So that I don't know. You can look for that. If you find a source for that, bring it to next class.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're finished for today. I love this because I always come to Shul feeling 1,000 times more prepared. We've gone over a little bit the Parsha. We see the connection with Haftarah. I love that. Thank you, everybody, for joining. I do want to say that in 2 weeks, I am appearing on a panel in Yeshivat Maharat, and I will not be available the whole morning on Wednesday. So, I mean, we'll message it, but I will not be able to teach this class. I thought I would be able to teach it at a different time, but it turns out that I don't have availability all that morning, so I will miss it because I will also miss learning about the Haftarah, and I will miss learning with you, with all of you, who I love learning with. I wanted to tell you that. And let's leave with the song that is on Motzei Shabbat. You can look it up in your ventures and see if you can find the textual connections. Amar Hashem li Yaakov al tira avdi Yaakov al tira. And it goes through the Aleph Bet. Bachar, God chose, that's Aleph and then Bet. Bachar Hashem bi Yaakov al tira avdi Yaakov al tira. Do not be afraid. God is with us wherever we are. And God promises that our unique connection will never be severed. On that hopeful note, thank you, everybody for joining. Sending love to all. Be well. I hope your cameras also have a healing. We should say the healing of the nefesh, the healing of the goof, and the healing of our cameras. Bye, all.
Shalom.
Shalom. Thanks, Masha.